Kiran. I perform as Madam Gandhi. Who all was here at the San Francisco Lesbians Who Tech? Raise your hand. That's awesome, about half the room. Cool. Well, it's a pleasure to meet the new faces. I think this is my 4th or 5th Lesbians Who Tech, and every time I come, I feel enormously safe and joyful. I feel safe and joyful. And sometimes you get a little nervous backstage, so it's such a pleasure to feel good in a room. Does that make sense? Yeah, it's cool. So I think what I'd like to do today to use my time is I want to tell you a little bit of my story, a couple minutes, just so you have a sense of how I think. And then, actually, will you start this timer so I actually know where I am at in the talk? Please, that would help me a lot. Yeah, thank you. I want to use a couple minutes to tell you my story, and then kind of share my thoughts on where we're at in this 4th wave of feminism that I'm seeing. And then since February's talk in San Francisco, I want to share 2 more things that I've learned in the past couple months. Hashtag progress, growth. I grew up here in New York to 2 fairly traditional Indian parents. I grew up really passionate about music. I grew up on 36th and Lex in Murray Hill. And for me, music as a young person really was my entry point into truth. We had this bus driver who would pick us up. We were like 5, 6 years old, kindergarten, 1st grade students. And for the parents, he would play the classical music when they would put us on the bus. But then when we would drive away, he would change it back to Hot 97 or to Z100 and play Nas and play Lauryn Hill, and I felt like this was truth. And I felt like my parents made music sometimes feel a little taboo, like music is a waste of your time or it's not something that's a real career. But I always felt joyful playing the drums. I started playing the drums when I was 8. I felt joyful playing the piano and creating and dancing. I felt joyful learning about other people's stories through music. I felt joyful learning about other people's oppression through music. I was living on 36th in Lexington, but I didn't know as a young person what was going on in Harlem. The only reason why I would know was because I was listening to music. Throughout my journey, my parents were pushing me to go and get super good grades. I went on to go to Georgetown, which is one of the brilliant places on earth. And I remember arriving there and I was majoring. I did political science. I did women's studies. I was also a math major. That's like my real brown South Asian side. And I remember just feeling so out of place. I felt like I was good at those things, but I didn't feel joyful. I felt joyful when I was sitting in on congas, when I was sitting in on percussion, when I was sitting in on drums. And after many years, all we can do is really start optimizing for our own joyfulness instead of trying to pretend something that we are not. I mean, my hair is yellow, you know, we have to just be free. And I remember in my senior year having a decision that I wanted to make, you know, am I supposed to go and work at these internships on the Hill which don't make me feel good? Or could I maybe go work in music and use my education to go work in music? I wanted my day to be music, my night to be music. And even though I really valued what my parents had taught me about giving back, I didn't necessarily feel for me that giving back in the political system in that moment was right, because it didn't make me feel passionate. But I felt, what if instead I can give back through my music? So I got my first job working at Interscope Records. I worked there in LA for 2 years. I was using my math, I really finessed. I used my math degree to work at Spotify, studying Spotify streams and YouTube views at the record label. It was 2011, and so Spotify had just come to the States. So the job was pretty cool. My job was to analyze these patterns to understand how we could serve our artists better on these streaming services. For example, we would put out a music video by Lady Gaga, but the label didn't really have a sense. If we get 1 million views in the first week, is that a win or is that a disaster? And so my work was benchmarking these numbers and understanding how can we promote and break our artists online. So I did that job for 2 years. But towards the end of that period, I remember kind of feeling bored and a little bit anxious. And also, I had to be honest with myself. I'm working at a record label, and it's a full-time corporate job. It's Universal Music. But I really wanted to work at the label because I love music and because I'm a drummer. I love playing music. And I remember having a bit of a jealousy. I felt a little jealous of my friends who were touring all around the world. I did. I had that feeling. And jealousy can be a very dark emotion if you use it inappropriately and if you use it to throw shade at others. But jealousy can also be a very profoundly useful emotion if you use it to dial into what your deepest intuition is for what you want for your own life. And just in that moment of being honest with myself, I remember seeing in my boss's calendar that she had a meeting with M.I.A. And so I asked, can I join this meeting with M.I.A? I was like the bottom of the totem pole. She said, you cannot join this meeting. I said, please, I won't say anything, please, please. So she brought me, and I was there watching. Any M.I.A fans in the room? Yeah. That's paper planes for those who didn't raise their hands. That's the main obvious one. That's like the white people one, you know, no shit. That's like the mainstream one, paper planes. So I was in this meeting, and after the meeting finished, M.I.A left with her team, but some of the Interscope staff was still there. And I looked at one of the product managers who was there, and I said, you know, Diana, what would make M.I.A.'s tour really excellent is if she had a drummer. Maybe somebody brown, maybe somebody female, maybe somebody young who knows the parts, you know? And she took me seriously, you know? And shouts out to female mentors. All we can do is put each other on, you know? And we made a music video of me drumming to her, to M.I.A.'s work. And we sent it to M.I.A, and M.I.A responded directly to me. And she said, we're not thinking about the tour just yet, but I'll hit you up when we do. And it was amazing. I was so happy just to be validated by her, let alone thinking it would actually happen. The other thing I felt a little bit jealous of, let's say, or rather a positive spin on that is inspired by. I felt inspired by my boss at Interscope, Brooke Michael, who was my mentor and who was my boss. And I felt inspired by her because she had an MBA. She had an MBA, and I would watch her walk into these meetings with all very, very senior sort of executive white male staff in the room and just be herself and come in with excellent ideas and let the work and the quality of her work speak for itself. And I said, I want to do that. I want to do that so that maybe one day I can come back into the music industry and sign artists who are moving the needle on gender equality, who are moving the needle on gender liberation, on queerness, on trans, and combating transphobia. This would be such a passion of mine. So I started applying for my MBA, and I got into Harvard. And so I remember going out to Harvard and getting ready to move to Boston from LA. And at this same time, M.I.A.'s team hit me back. And they said, okay, cool, we'd like for you to come on the tour. It was a big old clusterfuck. Sometimes you have to be careful what you actually put out into the universe. The goddesses above might just be like, okay, yeah, we got you. Yeah. You know who says that? Jill Soloway. I heard it. So she, instead of saying thank God, she always says thank goddess. I love this. Yeah, I've been starting to say the goddesses. It's so amazing. Easier to imagine a bunch of mamas up top looking down on you, you know, than one sort of like white man. It just does, it's confusing, that's all. So I remember moving out to Boston and getting ready to start my MBA, and I looked at the dates and I said, maybe I can make this work. Maybe I can make this work. And that's precisely what I did. I was able to do the M.I.A tour and travel because most of the dates were on the weekend, and then come back in time for school and learn. And Harvard Business School, yeah, thank you. This place is one of the, it's like the breeding ground of the capitalist patriarchy, you know? Yeah, it really is. It really is. Even some of the things they teach is quite dark. But imagine if you can take that kind of education and flip it and use it actually to be better at public speaking, to understand how to define and consume and share value. And so I spent my 2 years doing that. The first year was the M.I.A tour. Now I have a couple of minutes left, and what I want to do at that time is tell you in the past couple of years, I've been making and producing a lot of my own music since I worked with M.I.A. And the reason why I wanted to do that is because so much of this EDM and hip-hop music that we listen to, even though the beat is so good, and I'm like there in the boxing class, like, yeah, like I feel cool, all the trap music is playing, whatever, but all of it is so misogynist. So much of this EDM music, the covers of the albums are like naked women. And the music is bitch and hoe and all this stuff. And it's like, damn, after a while, I don't want to have to keep turning up to the sound of my own oppression. You feel me? So I'm not here to tell others how to make their art, but I am here to build the alternative. And for me, this most recent movement of feminism has two major qualities to it that I see. The first is that it's been very successful at mapping the online to the offline, about using hashtag activism, which does get a lot of criticism, but I see only good, I see mostly good, to allow for something like the 2017 Women's March, which was the largest single-day march in the history of the world, inspired by the work that the Black Lives Matter movement had done just a year before. I think the other thing that I'm seeing in this fourth wave of feminism is about valuing femininity in all of us, and about valuing femininity so that we can move towards a paradigm structure shift, whereby instead of us having this ranking system of masculinity above femininity, we move towards a true spectrum. Because if one does not connote privilege over the other, like being more masculine allows you to have more privilege than being femme, then you exist on a true spectrum such that no matter what your gender identity is, or your sexual orientation is all on that spectrum, it doesn't connote some sort of oppression versus privilege. And so this is really where my work is right now. I want to talk about valuing what women and femmes bring to the table, such that we move towards the non-binary, we move towards the trans, we move towards the queer, we move towards the liberated. This is what's most important to me, what I'm seeing in this fourth wave. And finally, with my last minute and 15 seconds, I want to teach you two things that I've learned since February, especially for us in the queer community. The first thing that I've learned is that love is everything. Okay, so last time I was giving this speech, I was like hella flexing on my Instagram story because I knew this person who I had a crush on was hella watching. I was like doing the most. And then 2 months later, we got together, and now it's like real. And one thing that I see, it happens a lot, is that we just move through so many people, and we think, oh, I'm with this person, but maybe the next thing will be better. And we are in this thing where we have so much access to more than any other period in the world. But what if instead we said, no, we have to make this work. I want to give my most love energy to this, and I want to allow it to nourish me. How profound would that be? Because when we have love and intimacy, yeah, I feel that way. I'm a Pisces, we so softy, but I think it's real. When we have love and intimacy, whether it's with a partner or our community, I do believe it gives us that nourishing energy to go off into the more difficult situations, whether it's at work or at a place like Harvard Business School or wherever, to shine and to contribute. It's so, so, so important. And then the second thing that I wanted to say was about investing in our own skill sets. The past 4 years, I only started producing a couple years ago, but I knew that if I didn't have the skill set to open my laptop and make beats and make songs like the ones you just heard and the ones that you will hear tonight, that I would always be depending on other people. And so the first thing I want to say is love is everything. The second thing I want to say is invest in your own skill sets. And that's my talk. Own your voice. Thank you.